Hey guys, I'm Alex from Arc Stories. Today we're going to be talking about coding in the kindergarten curriculum. We're going to talk about some of the pros, some of the cons, and what that'll look like in the classroom. Okay then, so what is coding? What actually is it? It's essentially the language that computers speak. And every program on your computer has this sequence of events that it reads through to tell it what to do. And that allows us to open our web browser, use programs like Word and PowerPoint, and also run things like games. And basically, it's a really emerging skill because even now we're surrounded by technology, but now with emerging AI and all these autonomous systems, it's really a valuable skill to be able to write programming, to speak the language so that you can potentially use that in a future job. So as of December last year, it's been introduced into the Australian curriculum in New South Wales, and that's going to come around at about 2019, okay? And we're going to talk about some of the pros now and some of the negatives. So one of the pros is the thinking it teaches you. It teaches you this analytical thinking process, which is it's systematic, so it's step by step. It's also critical thinking, so it makes you think about the process, okay? It's not just doing, it makes you actually really engage in what you're actually trying to achieve. And it's also great for problem solving because you want to achieve something and you don't know how to achieve it because it's not in the moment, okay? You have to plan all your steps ahead, and then the problem happens. You have to come back and figure out at what step the issue occurred in. So it's great for problem solving. Another thing that you'll probably hear is it's engaging. Now this is sort of the holy grail of teaching, making lessons engaging, getting kids involved. So ICT and media in general has always been engaging, but technology is like a next level of engagement. And it is that way because it's tactile. So kids, are touching it, they're watching it, experiencing it, seeing how things react. It can be made into things like toys and robots, so the kids are naturally interested. And if you think about, what education used to be like, when everything was quite abstract and it was written on a whiteboard or on a blackboard, teachers really had to try quite hard to get their kids engaged. And the reason they had to do that was because it was usually unrelatable and it was some textbook example. But now, with programming, with ICT and robots, the learning can be a lot more focused on what the kids are interested in. So basically the kids, can think of things that they like to do and they can learn processes by doing that. Another area where it's a really great tool is it's cross-curricular. So programming involves sequential writing, so it covers literacy, reading, writing, speaking. There's a lot of collaborative effort with students. It also uses maths. You've got to think about measurement, space, distance, time, all these things. Okay, you've got a bit of science in there when you think about critical thinking and discovery processes. And it just involves a whole bunch of other subjects. So you can really intertwine a lot of activities with coding. And the last one is, and it relates to the engaging nature, is it's an authentic experience. So what that means is it's based on real events, that are actually occurring in real time. Kids are doing it, they're right there, they're in the event. The problem that they have to solve is right in front of them. It's not written out, it's not like a contrived scenario, like what if Janie wants to buy 2 apples, it's nothing like that. It's right in front of you, and that's a really great benefit of coding. Some of the negatives, okay, so one of the biggest negatives is coding, and these robots are made by big companies, big toy companies usually. So now they have access to even more data about kids because they can record and they can track how kids are using the toys, how they're engaged, even go so far as maybe even recording. I can't see that being legal, but definitely in the testing phase, they'll be learning how to track eye movements and all that sort of thing. So this is pretty crazy because basically now you've got big companies that are really going to be able to target your kids with very, very specific and accurate engagement strategies. And kids, they don't quite, depending on the age, they don't quite have the reflexive ability to sort of stand back and go, why is this toy so interesting? Why do I want to play it? Is it good for me? They don't think like that. They're just engaged and they're in there and they're loving it. So that can have some negative consequences. It also is consumeristic. All of a sudden, got more kids' toys out there, more kids' robots. It's materialistic. These companies are making money off advertising to these kids. So there's always the money side of things. We've also got some associated issues. So things like attention deficit or disorders can occur, developmental issues can occur with these things, lack of social skills, and you've also got all the negative kinds of media out there. So the games that aren't really teaching the kids anything, they're just clickbait, or they're just instant reward. They're not teaching skills, they're just bright flashing music colors. Like the poker machines of the child world, essentially. And so the last thing I want to talk about is ages under 3. So this age in particular is quite susceptible to these negative influences, and that's because their brains are still developing, right? Especially in the first year of their life, the brain is growing connections which relate specifically to visual and hearing. So why this is important is because the world really hasn't changed much, in terms of physical attributes. You need to walk around, you need to be able to gauge distances, you need to be able to cross the road, you need to be able to hear, and more importantly, you need to be able to have social interactions with people. So you need to be able to read facial expressions, intonation, and emotion. So those are skills that we still need today. When a child learns to only read something that's two-dimensional without these features, basically their brain will wire to be able to receive those messages, but then later on, when they're having more human interaction, they could be quite slow to develop those because they didn't quite get them in that critical time, in the 1 to 2 years. And I say up to 3 because, kids vary in their development and it can take a bit longer for your child to develop. So that's why it's really important to maybe, not use media and those sorts of tools. Now, what will this look like in the classroom? Because it seems, crazy now. We've got all these negatives and some benefits, it would seem, but what actually will we see in the classroom? Well, interestingly enough, classrooms have been introducing coding for years already. And basically what you'll see is a lot more robots. So these little toys that kids can program. And the buttons are on the toys, so they're still there. They're still playing, they're still physically playing with the toy. They're not putting kindergarten kids on laptops. They're moving these objects around and they're learning that, buttons control the toy and move it. You'll also see a lot more sequential type lessons and activities. So cards, lots of cards, putting things in order. You also might see maps, a lot more gridded maps, things for like the B-bot and dot and dash, and this is the idea of, learning to move things by communication and not simply by pushing and pulling. You'll also see a lot more ICT. So one of the programs out there is called Scratch Junior, and that gets kids to program their own games, which is a neat little way. And so these types of programs, you'll see a lot more of them in the classroom, and they're integrated. They're introduced across multiple subject areas, so they fit well. So in addressing a common argument that comes up is that the curriculum's way overcrowded. Essentially, what that means is teachers have to be a lot more creative in what they do. They can't segment subjects really anymore. They've got to interweave subjects and have a lot more cross-curriculum opportunities for kids. So the programming, maybe they write about how they do it. They write the sequence, they plan it, they read about them, they research it. They talk about it in groups. Then they present something on the robot. So there's all these ways that coding is used, and it's already in a lot of schools. So now it's just become more compulsory because we're going to be needing it. We're going to be needing it for future jobs. So what does this mean for you? What do you need to know? Where's your go-to? Okay, the go-to is, when you're thinking about these robots and these toys and these programs, I would think that pretty good advice is to simply think, what real life skills is my child learning when they use this program? Try and look at it and sort of assess it and think, what do they have to do in the program? Is it teaching them to think ahead, to problem solve? Is it teaching them to think of things in more dimensions than just one? Is it using a lot of different skills? Or is it simply just reward based? Is it just flashing lights and music? Is it consuming their time? Is it just going, are they just on this thing all the time? And those are the sorts of thoughts that will be able to tell you. You'll know straight away if it's a good idea or not a good idea. So anyway, I hope that helps. I hope that clarifies things a bit more for you guys. Liked what I did, check out some of my other videos. And again, I'll put some references down below that you can check out. But tell me, what do you think? Do you think that coding should be compulsory? Do you think it's a great thing for kids, or do you see only the negatives, the detrimental effects? Comment below. Thanks.